Hi, I'm Richie Mackay.
And I'm Davey Bolt, and you are listening to the Wrong Bias Podcast.
And on show 67 of the Wrong Bias Podcast, we are joined by the World Bowls Tour Big Cheese and all-round good guy, Mr Gordon Woods. We have a chat about his involvement in overseeing the bowls at the recent Glasgow Commonwealth Games. We also get the facts on the newly named BBBC. That's right, the bloody BBC's decision to step away from the World Indoor Championships at Potters. And we also touch on a little bit of Bowls England. Thanks go to Greengage, Bowls International, Renton Wealth Management, Jack and Bowl, Pentland Precast Concrete, and it's a welcome to some company called Bolt Distribution UK Limited, and of course our very own pocket rocket, Miss Jacqueline Henderson. Thanks as always for all your support, and we hope you enjoy the show. And welcome everybody to another Wrong Bias Podcast. It's show number 67, and on the show we've got Gordon Woods, Mr Commonwealth Games organiser, and Mr WBT coming on for a little chat. Right, mate, we've into our fifth heat wave. You enjoyed the outdoor season so far?
Loved it, mate. Loved it every second. Greens are flying, 6 foot of green. No, I haven't. No,
if anybody's ever heard, apparently he's retiring from outdoor bowls next season.
I am.
To a degree.
That's me done.
To a degree, because I'm led to believe that he's still going to play mixed pairs.
Well, only is just the right thing to do, because we've obviously qualified to Leamington, and young Sophie's got one more year left at under 18 internationals, so it would be unfair to not at least try again with her next season, but that'll be all I'll be playing. Yes, looking forward to getting on the golf course, mate.
Obviously, the Commonwealth Games has taken place. Congratulations to all the medalists. Big shout out to Sammy, who finally got his much sought after gold medal, mate.
Absolutely.
I was pleased for the kid. You must have been delighted for the lad and all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought it was a fantastic performance overall by the English players.
Well done to them. Congratulations to Gary Kelly and Adam McQueen from Northern Ireland. And of course, our little darling Sean Ronale, who was on the show, didn't get the gold that she was looking for, but her and Chloe got a good bronze in the pairs. So well done to her.
Yep.
And she becomes the one of 5 medalists that's been on the podcast.
Well, not that we like to brag.
In fact, I've actually made a mistake there, because it should be 6, because you're one as well, aren't you?
Well, yeah, thanks for remembering.
Regarding the rest of the home nations, Scotland's medal haul, apart from well done to the mixed pairs, Mary Stevenson, Robert Barr, James Aiken and Sarah Jane Ewan, who were the sporting directors. Wales in the bronze in the same event. Overall, mate, for Scotland?
There'll obviously be disappointment with it being a home games as well. Yeah, it happens. When you look at Tatty and Paul's medal haul over the years, yeah, it happens. It's I think the format, mentioned it a little bit in our chat with Gordon, it was hard. It was quite, especially that one end tie break, and just that typical sets format, really, isn't it? You could absolutely romp away with the first set, get nicked in the second set, and then you've got one end to win the game. It was hard, and I think obviously some of the Scots players just fell either side of that. But hey, they're all in there to compete. They're all in there to win medals, and everybody can't be giving them, can they? Yeah. So.
And the thing that the format did get a bit grief. I mean, when it first came out, I was sort of like, format is a bit brutal. But then when you delve into it, the BPL Australia, everybody goes on, what a great format that is. And lo and behold, it's 2 sets of 5 ends and one end tiebreak,
yeah,
which was the Commonwealth Games. And yet, everybody's coming out and saying it's a brutal format in the Commonwealth Games, but it's such a wonderful format when it's down in Australia.
And obviously, from the Australian point of view, obviously they've had a hugely sort of unsuccessful Commonwealth Games from their point of view as well. Top players came across, and again, just didn't quite make it. And that's, apologies, because obviously the Australian para team won gold, didn't they? And I actually watched a little bit of the game they played against our guys, and they were fantastic. Like, to be honest with you.
Yeah, really, I mean, Jamie Reynolds was out. I thought he was man of the Commonwealth Games. But watching some of his balls in the Paris was great.
Yeah,
and Serena Bonnell played the ball of the Commonwealth Games for me. Just pulled the white back for 3 for a gold medal. Absolutely fantastic. So well done to them. On the well, I don't think it's particularly linked to the performance of the Jackaroos, but the coach Gary Willis has announced that he's stepping down after 14 years with Balls Australia. I think he just wants to spend more time with his family. He did come on comms with us up in Glasgow, and he came across absolute star, mate. Full of knowledge, fantastic.
You're not going to get a position like he's had in Australia if you haven't got that knowledge and savvy about you. And he's obviously done a fantastic job. And then, I probably agree with you. I don't think it'll be off the back of what's just happened. It must be a very, very time demanding role. All these things come to an end.
Definitely is. And of course the TV coverage, it was going out on TNT, which was a little bit different, got a little bit hammered because people couldn't get at it because it was behind a pier wall. But I mean, you were paying $5.99 for 12 days coverage.
That's all I pay, and you can cancel it straight away. So it was like $5.99, and you could watch any of the 4 rinks. Didn't bother.
We've never been able to do it before.
No, I mean, it didn't bother us that a couple of the rinks didn't have commentary. In fact, to be honest, it was a bonus at some points, but not that I'll ever criticise any commentators. But it was quite nice at times to just watch the balls.
When we're doing the streaming, people complain that are you too much chitter chatter, and then there's nobody commentating.
And the wins that there's nobody talking.
It was at times you shake your head. I thought the camera work at times was a little bit debatable. I think the angles were a little bit.
That would be one. That would be my only criticism of the coverage. Was like I was staring into a green expanse at some point, and I was like, "Well, there's a rink there somewhere, but I ain't got a clue where it's coming."
Yeah. I mean, with the stream with we do, the angle that I like is somebody on the mat in the distance with the ball actually, so you can actually see the ball coming down.
The trajectory of the ball.
Green. You don't have to zoom in on the ball to watch it go trundling down the green.
Yeah.
But I think there was a few times where the ball was coming down. They had the camera on the ball there, and the ball was past the head by the time they went back. And what happened there?
Yeah.
But no, I think as a first attempt by them, I think I'll give them 7 out of 10 for us.
And like I say, you just got to hope that they see the benefit of the sport, and hopefully it's had good viewing figures. And this is where we need to be to try and get more channels or more parties interested.
And of course, on the back of that, we will have a discussion and get the full facts from Gordon about the BBC withdrawing. To be fair, the BBC's been good for the sport because they promoted it all the World Championships and what have you for over 30 years or whatever it is. And I know it's a blow to go, but hey ho, there's a whole new social media world out there now, mate.
There is, and we're just one of a long line of sports that's gradually disappeared from the BBC over a number of years now. It's like you get no coverage of the majority of sports now. BBC's coverage of sport is just being obliterated completely. To be honest with you, it'll be the detriment to them during the World Cup, continually saying, please pay your TV licence. So there's obviously a lot of people out there that just aren't, because they'll just watch it through digital. Yeah,
it's the old famous thing from Monty Python, and what does the Romans ever do for us?
Yeah.
The aqueducts. All that malarkey. Yep, so we hope you enjoy the little chat we have with Gordon, and thanks as always for your support.
And on today's show, we have Gordon Woods of World Bowls Tour, and more recently, he was in charge of the Commonwealth Games. Gordon, it's great to have you on.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Richie. I look forward to conversation about all sorts of stuff.
Great to have you on, especially obviously post Commonwealth Games, because it would be nice just to obviously get an understanding of how things went, and obviously in comparison to Commonwealth Games gone by, it was a big change, this one as well. How did you feel the whole thing went, Gordon, from start through to finish?
Yeah, I think, one, I was delighted to be involved in such a big organisation, such a big event. It is one of the absolute peaks of our sport. It's brilliant that we get to take part in a multi-sport games. And yeah, I totally get it was different this time round. I totally get that bowlers sort of expect in the middle of the summer out that event should be outdoors, not necessarily indoors. But Glasgow took on the baton of hosting the Commonwealth Games at short notice in relation to these sorts of events. Normally a host venue would have 6 or 8 years build up to host it. They did it in 2 years with a budget that was less than 25% of what Birmingham had to host the games the time before that. Similarly, they had there was no commitment of government funding or for public funding to go into the games, so they had to try and run it within the budget that was available to them. That meant that they picked these 4 venues, decided that the whole thing would be focused on 4 locations, one of which was the SEC, and credit to Bowls Scotland and to World Bowls for really championing to keep bowls in the Commonwealth Games. The minute that decision get taken that they were going to be one of the 10 sports, it's then how do you make it as good as it possibly can be in an indoor environment? And there's a lot of work went on before I came on board. My role was tech op manager, so basically things around the field of play I was involved with, but a chap called Adam Payton, who came from a volleyball background, was the competitions manager. The director of sport, Natalie Cunningham, who's came really from a swimming background and into a fairly big role, and Mark Cowan from World Bowls as the technical delegate. A lot of the planning had gone through from their stages, first of all, to make sure that it could happen. And we ended up with a 4 rink indoors scenario in an arena environment. And from that point of view, I think the image was very good to promote the sport. Problem being that it limits from the 24 rinks you had at Leamington down to 4 rinks suddenly you're at in Glasgow. And that meant the format had to change as well.
Luckily for us, we're in a sport where there's not many people got opinions, Gordon. So there's not many people say anything really. If you put something on social media, it's always generally quite quiet. However, we said from day one, this has got to be seen in the positive light that bowls has had that opportunity to be showcased. I mean, to be one of the 10 sports was absolutely fantastic for us. And watching from the outside, I said on the last podcast, my only thought on the whole thing was I just felt the format, and again, through no fault of anybody else's, it's the way it had to be. Didn't necessarily think the format. I just think it was quite cutthroat compared to what it normally was, because obviously it was over so many ends. You had time to recover, and that probably couldn't happen, especially with that shorter tie break. But hey, besides that was my only thoughts about it. I think it was showcased really well. I think, looking at it, the organisation was fantastic. And those who did watch and paid the $5.99 or whatever it might have been to go behind the paywall, absolutely disgusting, absolute fortune, disgusting. But those who did watch, I think, were very, very positive. And it was just non-stop balls all the way through the day. And what more can we want as a sport to be in a major competition like that and be able to watch balls all the way through?
Yeah, I'm coming on board as somebody that's been invested in the sport for a long while. I've seen us play long formats and short formats and 1 end tie breaks and 3 end tie breaks. And there was loads of stuff that I've seen in the last year of this event that I wore my sceptical hat with. 2 sets of 5 ends in pairs look too short. A 1 end tie break looks far too ruthless, cutthroat. You can win it with a fluke. That sort of scenario. Positioning jacks, taking the art form of delivering a jack off of the sport. These were all decisions that were taken, factored in on the timescale that was available, on the rinks that were available, and what could still prove to be a competitive event. I think at the end of the day, it did provide a real spectacle for the sport. It did provide some really fantastic games. As you alluded to in your question there, we did have some great winners. And an example of that is that, Adam McEwen and Gary Kelly win the men's pairs title on a format that was 2 sets of 5 ends and a 1 end tiebreak. And that's the same pair that won the World Outdoor Pairs Championship playing on 17 end format outdoors.
Absolutely,
But sometimes it almost doesn't matter what the format is. The best players are going to end up winning the medals at the end of it, because they're the ones that will get their head round it and be able to be competitive at it. If one thing, maybe the lack of the quarter-final round. So suddenly big sections of 6 and 7, and you were playing for 1 place. if you go off to a bad start, you're in a real jeopardy in the group. So that taking 2 through from each group, I know a country like New Zealand who end up with 4 top 10 positions in the non-para events but don't actually qualify for any semi-final, would definitely have loved to have had those quarter-final rounds to win another chance. But then again, if you're the person that's gone through the group unbeaten and then you suddenly rock up in the quarter-final and get taken out in a one-end tie-break, you're probably going to be quite upset that you're not playing for a medal. So,
yeah, exactly. And contrary to what I'd said about the format itself, I think said, those countries who are professional and do the right preparation, they know what they're walking into. So that was up to them to then navigate around that shorter format and think to themselves, well, do we play a slightly different game to the way we normally would do? And, it's nobody went into it blind. It is what it is. Otherwise, you don't have balls at the Commonwealth Games, full stop.
And if you'd have seen basically from that big empty space of that hall to be created into the arena that was created, and the work that went on with the guys to actually build as good a surface as they possibly could over that event, that SEC floor isn't level. In no way or shape is it level. And actually in certain places, if you take the training hall venue alone, from one end of the training hall to the other was 10 centimetres of difference in the hall. So they had to then try and get an indoor bowling green level, despite the fact that one end was 10 centimetres difference to the other. And there was areas of the main hall was similar. To be able to get it as close as they could, not every rink played the same, not every hand played the same, but best of luck of finding any indoor bowling club in the country where every rink plays like that. But the standard of bowls that could be played on it and was played on it in certain levels was fantastic. And again, some of the negatives that you get with having to try and play different formats and play indoors, you get benefits to the sport as well. The VI semi-final night, the night where with the para-mix pairs semi-finals, both went to tie-breaks. The standard was really good across all of the para-disciplines. And yeah, the para event is much better being played indoors than outdoors. It brings players to much more of a similar standard and a good standard as well, which showcases the sport and the accessibility to the sport. So I totally get that there will be traditionalists out there who would not be happy with a lot of the changes. But I think those who did watch it, I think those who actually saw what was going on can come away and say that was quite a good event.
Yeah, totally. And to be honest with you, the majority of the comments that I've seen were really positive. It was, I think, like I say, definitely, I mentioned earlier on about just showcasing the sport, being able to watch it, multiple sessions during the day on any of the rinks. So you could watch, it's not, in a lot of the things that we do, you're usually restricted to the show rink. So you only get to watch that one game and you're trying to find out what's happening with the rest. But I was, watching through the TNT app and literally flicking between 3 and 4 different rinks just to get an update on scores, which I thought was fantastic.
Yeah, and the demand increased as the week went on. The rinks 2 and 3 that were the sort of slightly lesser broadcast rinks, or they ended up having commentary for the second part of the event. That wasn't planned. That was because a demand that was coming in from a viewership, especially in Asia, that wanted to have all of those matches with commentary. And so that got added on halfway through the tournament as well. So there was a lot of matches. 300 odd matches or 360 odd matches over it, and there were tight turnarounds because everything had to be done within a really tight time scale. So much so we were sort of bringing on the bowls for the next session as we're still trying to get the previous session off. And we'd some great volunteers that helped us out through it. A lot of the times they would bring the bowls on to the end of the rink and we'd try and make sure they were in the right place. There was definitely one of the days, one of the volunteers was laying out the bowls just as we were about to do an athlete walk on. The entries were coming for the next round of matches. So she was still on the green and I'm sort of saying to her, look, we really need to probably get off the green now. She was still laying them out precisely, getting them right. And then I said a second time, look, time's going, we really need to move. And she's still getting there. And I'm conscious they're about to walk by us. We're down to about 5 seconds on the countdown clock. I'm saying, look, we need to go now. So she did start to go off.
I was really hoping you were going to say you called security. Max and Paddy walking straight in, carrying her out.
As we're walking off the green, after the third time I've said to her, she then realises she's holding a cloth of one of the players. So she turns round to go back to the rink, at which point I grabbed her and carried her off the ring at that point in time. And then it just really apologise after it and sort of say, look, I'm really, really sorry. We just needed to move at that point. It just showed how quick it was turning around to actually get one onto the next. And there was really very little space for anybody in the crowd to be bored. The rounds were really good.
Crowd attendance okay, Gordon?
I think I've mentioned at the start about the difficulties that Glasgow had of working within a budget. I think one of the things, if they probably had their time again, and I'm speaking for people that are much more powerful than me in that event, I think they might have bulked up the ticketing team. I think they might have bulked up the marketing team. I think it was always going to be difficult on a summer coming after a World Cup in football that takes so much of the attention time in sport. I think Glasgow 26 had to strike this fine balance of reminding everybody it was a downsized games and it wasn't going to be splashing the cash games, but also trying to remind people how important it was. And I'm not sure that the balance was struck perfectly. Ticket sales were over 500 every day, every session. But again, we probably have the difficulty that we're not a sport where you go in and you watch for 2 hours and you come back out. It's a 8-hour session, basically. So Scotland were very rarely on in the first round of the matches in a day, so they're only coming in maybe say at 10 o'clock rather than at 8:30 in the morning, and people drifting away at various points. So there was a turnaround in the venue each time, but yeah, nobody wants to see empty seats in a venue, and that was a big venue, 1,700 seats it could hold. When it was filled on the finals days, it was really good. The atmosphere was great. Yeah, there's certain mornings especially where we would have loved to have seen more folk in.
But I mean, it's like the athletics is on at the minute. And I was just reading today about the poor attendance. The stadium holds 23,000 and they're only getting 13,000 in. So it's not just bowlers, is it? That's struggling to attract punters in. But I've always said, Gordon, there's no tighter than a bowler, mate, is there?
Yeah, I think two sides. Of Glasgow 26, there's some of the organisers there definitely would suggest that bowls benefits when the other events sell out. So if you can't get tickets for cycling and swimming and athletics and gymnastics, then suddenly the smaller sports suddenly people will go to them just to be part of an event. That's probably London 2012. That was how it wins. It was especially how the Paralympics was a major success because people couldn't get tickets for London 2012, so they then wanted to use the venues in the Paralympics. Glasgow struggled to sell out the athletics or the gymnastics. And I think at that point, it suddenly then squeezes all of the minority sports. I bet we don't get those extras, at which point we rely on bowlers to buy the tickets. And the tickets were reasonably valued, but we're not a great sport at watching our own. We've got loads of people who love to play our sport and love to be in our clubs. We're probably not the best at actually getting out there and watching and paying for the privilege of watching the very best. In Glasgow, and an example even of that final weekend in Glasgow at the Commonwealths, it was the first weekend of the Scottish football season. It was back playing. That was why Celtic played on the Monday night afterwards to unveil the flag, because the cycling was still on at the velodrome straight across the road from it. Calvin Harris had 2 concerts at Hampden, Saturday and Sunday that same weekend. I know there's different markets for different events. One city suddenly hosting a major games plus other things on, it's quite tough. And yeah, probably for all the great that TNT and HBO did and Channel 5 and highlights, not being on that mainstream channel and BBC, as the Commonwealths would normally do, probably had a bit of an impact on ticket sales as well. Because that people are probably more noticeable of it. The European athletics, there was a better crowd in last night than there was in the first night, which probably, considering 1 million or so had watched on TV the night before, would probably have helped that. I think as well, we want every ticket sold in the venue, and players play better when there's an even better atmosphere in the venue. But the viewership, the broadcasting side as well, you have to play out to how many countries our sport was being played to around the world. We were the first sport to start in the games. We were near enough the last sport to finish. We were on live TV for the best part of 15 hours, 14 hours every single day, and pretty much every match could be covered. That was a huge benefit to our sport, and that's ideally what broadcasters hopefully will remember.
Were you given free rein, Gordon? Could you change anything? Or is there anything that you, looking back over your 3 months or 4 months building up, would you actually check? Because I know you like the things organised your way.
Yeah, I left my control freak at the door a wee bit for this one. It's such a big organisation, the Commonwealth Games, and you're not just dealing with your sport, you're dealing with all the sports, you're dealing with a board of, a senior leadership team and a commercial board as far as Glasgow 26 is concerned, and Commonwealth sport itself takes major decisions there as well, who are almost a separate entity also. So it's very hard to make individual changes. You feed back into the system, and people work out what's the best in the long term. We had the sort of big major changes 2 weeks out before the games, or 2.5 weeks out, because the entries were higher than had been budgeted for. So suddenly we ended up with a day zero. We started before the opening ceremony, which is the first time any sport has ever done that at the Commonwealth Games. It's been done in the Olympics, but never at Commonwealth level. So there was a lot of work going on behind the scenes at that point in time as to how training schedules get redone and things like that. As far as the actual formats, it was quite hard to change anything by the time I got on board. And I think looking back, I'm pleased I wouldn't have changed anything. I think the things that I was sceptical about, even a shot clock in the pairs where you're having to turn around between the lead and the skip, that's something we don't do at World Bowls Tour level. It was felt like it put a pressure on. It actually worked fine. There were very, very few timed out bowls across the whole thing. I think we worked out to be 0.007% of all bowls that were played in the event were timed out. So it's less than, it's so much, it's less than 1/10% that was actually timed out. And a lot of these countries had never done that before as well, had never even played with a shot clock, but understood it and got it.
So if you do it again, would you order yourself an e-scooter?
We were over 30,000 steps every day, and we were there for a fortnight. Our hours were 6 in the morning until 10:30 every night for the event. So yeah, it was absolutely fantastic to be involved, but we were all a bit buggered by the end of it. there wasn't much energy left, and all of our feet were a bit sore by the end of it.
Do you think, because it was a watered down version, that if it was a full games, do you think the BBC would have still covered it? Do you think that was an easy get out for the BBC because it was a watered down version?
I think it probably came down to money in the end. I think actually the bid that came in from TNT was something that the BBC were not prepared to match. In that climate. And that's, but any time you move away from the BBC, it has an impact on the number of eyes that will see your sport. But it does allow you some forms of innovation and change, because there are not different broadcasters will do things differently. When Channel 4 took over Test cricket, they did it at the right time, 2005 Ashes, and it played to a different market, and they did it differently. I think the Open golf coverage and the Masters coverage now in Sky is so much further ahead than when BBC covered the Open in days gone past. It just is, sometimes people with a bit deeper pockets nowadays can actually try and do things differently for your sport. I think TNT, not that I got to see much of the Bulls coverage, but if anything, we were only doing it when there was any controversial incident. You had to review back on it. But the bits I did see, I think they actually covered it very well.
Well, that's a perfect little seamless move into my next question. That one. So,
do you think we
planned that? So, based on what we've talked about there, obviously the World Bowls Tour recently, Gordon, announced that the BBC had pulled out of the World Championships, which at first glance, not great. When you sit back and think about things, obviously it depends what happens in the future, but sort of double barrel question just based on what we've just talked about there. Huge disappointment, yes. The second one would be, do you feel, and have you had any feedback from TNT that would sort of potentially bode well for the future with regards to viewing figures? And the third one on that is exactly what you've just talked about there. Now that we haven't got the BBC coverage, do you think that opens up a few avenues to do something different to expose the sport in a different light, so to speak? Because, the BBC have been excellent. It's been great for our sport, but at the same time, there's probably just held it back, just like you said about the golf. There's possibly other things that can be done, but again, it all comes down to cost. It all comes down to whether somebody else is interested in it. Obviously, I don't know whether you want to touch on what happened with the BBC and then where you think the future lies.
Yeah, no problem. Nice, easy three-part question.
Absolutely,
there.
yeah. I like to make it easy for you. ABC, Gordon. ABC.
So to give some of the background on where that decision came from, or why we've been landed in the position we were landed in, the contract the BBC signs with World Bowls Tour generally is a 3-year contract. On that 3 years, the first 2 are guaranteed, and the third year of the 3-year contract is reviewed, and they will decide if they're taking the uptake of the third year in the third year. And the cut-off date's June. Now, historically, that June date has always worried us because you're halfway through a year by the time they tell you if they're taking on the contract for the January. But traditionally, it's always been a yes. So when it's been a yes, it's not as big a problem. We always have a review meeting with BBC after the World Championships. Generally happens in April, May time or so. This time it happened just the end of April. BBC were happy with the figures that we'd produced. We still had a peak audience of over 800,000 watching the World Championships. The online presence was getting bigger every time. So through iPlayer, it was up to over 660,000 users. Even in the early days of the televised part, the sort of lowest figure we get to is about 300,000 watching at any point in time over the course of that week. There's all sorts of metrics, 5-minute peaks and 15-minute shares and stuff like that. But and the share of the audience on the final day was still coming up at a good 7 or 8% of the viewing audience around the UK, which was very comparable to previous years. So BBC were quite keen at that point in time. They were also, we were starting to talk about the production stuff for January and some of the events that could go forward, and how we would maybe change a couple of the wee things that we did. Right at the end of that meeting, the representative from BBC, they call us a heritage sport. In the BBC, that is one of their traditional long-standing sports that have been there for a while. I think there's a positive and a negative to a term like that. Sort of feels as though you're part of the mainstream stuff, but there's also a wee bit of are we classed in this is the type of sports they're getting rid of. And he did raise right at the end of the meeting that there were going to be cuts from the BBC, but his belief was it wasn't affecting his department at that point in time. When we got into June and we hadn't had the meeting, we asked the question when the meeting was going to happen for them to confirm it, at which point, middle of June, there was a Friday, basically contact us on a Friday, asked for a meeting on a Monday, which never sounds too promising. And sure enough, we got the body blow that they were pulling out of coverage from immediately, basically. So the 27 event wouldn't be on the BBC. He did it in 2 lines. He basically said that there was £500 million worth of cuts that are needed in the BBC. That's a figure that's been out there, publicised. They've sort of hacksawed their news coverage. That was the first main headlines, and then the next bit was some of the entertainment programmes went blankety blank, and a couple others I saw were getting the headlines recently. We were part of that cut process of the 500 million. The second bit, the line that they keep using is that 80% of the British population pay for the BBC on a licence fee basis, and 94% of the British population use it. So right the way through the World Cup, there was the QR codes was coming up because there was definitely a belief that a lot of the folk watching the World Cup might not have a licence fee at home, and if they scanned that, and suddenly some of that 500 million saving wouldn't be required quite so much if they could get that 14% of the population to actually pay their licence fee. Although I have sympathy for the BBC, I think they've done an awful lot of good for sport and for general TV coverage. Yeah, at the end of the day, I don't really care if they had to make the cuts. It affects our sport now, just like it's affected other sports out there. And the fact that it was the last main TV stream for our sport that is gone, it's left us in a really difficult position, and one that the World Bowls Tour board at the moment are fighting hard to try and find a different partner. Which probably leads on to the next parts of your question. So there have been talks ongoing with different broadcasters. We are finding some of them really productive, and we're finding some of them really difficult. I think what our ideal is, at some point somebody bites and says, yep, we're going to take a chance on it, at which point we can prove what we could do differently, how we could rebrand some of the stuff. Our sport probably suits commercial breaks. the fact that we play it in sets format, actually on some of those commercial channels, having a break, the audience at Potter stretching their legs maybe isn't a bad thing at the end of each set or in any of our venues. We can look at how we structure some of those events. We don't necessarily need to play evening sessions if TV broadcasters want us to put them into different slots, or we can do evening sessions and take away morning sessions, whatever suits from a broadcast point of view. We're still a relatively cheap sport to put in television. The Price, Sunset and Vine have been the traditional production partners for BBC, and they do it to a very professional level. Even the figure that they charge for that is nothing compared to a lot of live sport that's out there. They're actively seeking a broadcast partner, and even to the point it means having all this week to try and succeed, see if we can secure that. There's no good news to announce yet. It starts at the end of the day, yes or something.
As you know, Gordon, these things they don't happen overnight. There's so many processes that they've even got to go through to get their finances. So it ain't something that's going to happen overnight. The reason for the sort of combined question was maybe in some respects the announcement and the timing of the Commonwealth Games could work hand in hand with each other, because that could open up the door for somebody who, if TNT is seeing great viewing figures and showcase the sport probably the way people don't expect the sport to be, because the general players in the competition were of the younger generation, which is obviously the perception's completely different to that. I just wondered what big part of what happened. Surely the TV companies must get that data that the BBC had and must look at it and go, this could be a great thing for us. Doesn't have to be massive.
I think one of the feedbacks we get from TV companies are that our figures are good, and they can see that could be a benefit to fill that market for a week with the figures they've got.
Yeah.
The downside a wee bit is that some of the channels basically have to cancel their own regular schedule or rearrange their own regular schedule to put a sporting event on for a week, and they then always have the worry about whether their regular viewership goes back if they've been put out for that week. So that's something we're running up against and having to those discussions as well with. It's a twofold problem at the moment for us. It's the first problem is trying to find somebody for 27. Yeah. Ideally, we still want it to be broadcast on a channel. However, we've got support from Potters and from Ambassador, who are basically our main sponsor partners. The Scottish Open and the World Championships will run this year, whether it's on a terrestrial TV channel or not, or a satellite TV channel. They will support those events. Yeah, there's work to be done at World Bowls Tour level to see how we rearrange our events, how we support those events. The budgets are going to be tighter than they've been before to support that if we don't get a broadcast partner. So that's the first part. The second part is then to do the World Championships as professionally as we can on an online platform if we don't get a broadcast partner this year, so that we can then try and say, what can we do for 28, and take that back out to the different broadcasters and say, look, this is how good we can make it. Has that changed your minds for 28 and how we can work on there? So from a World Bowls Tour point of view, we're really thankful for the support that Potters and Ambassador give us to allow us to have that breathing space for this year. And I think our players will understand that some things are going to be tighter this year than before. And part of that's going to be prize money as well, I think, unless a broadcast partner comes on board. So we are actively working on that way. It's not easy, and the timescale doesn't make it easy either. But trust me that we are out there, and the timing of the announcement during the Commonwealth Games might not have been ideal, but it also did highlight at a time when bowls was on TV. Yeah. And again, that has opened up a couple of conversations for us because of that.
Which is great, which is exactly what my thoughts were, and obviously hence the question. So no, yeah, I totally get that.
We all know the sponsors are queuing up to sponsor bowls, mate, aren't they? They're queuing, they're knocking at the door. We see posts regularly. Why don't they get another sponsor? Yeah, they're queuing up, aren't they, to give you 30,000 or whatever it is to sponsor the events. I know the UK Open is due next year. Would that go ahead, Gordon, or is that just something dependent on finances now?
Yeah, so the board point of view at this moment in time is that we are trying to make sure that we know exactly where we are financially by the time of the Scottish Open. Once the Scottish Open is confirmed, we will take the decision on the UK Open at that point in time. It still allows us time to run the qualifiers from a PBA point of view, if required, to get us to a March event, and it would give us time to plan it out and try and secure extra sponsorship if required. Cambridge Chesterton was a fantastic venue for us last year at the UK Open, and they are desperately keen for us to be back down there again this year. We've already been working with them about options to see whether that's possible. As it sits here today, it looks a long way off to be able to run the 3 events this year. Nothing's off the table. All the discussions are happening round about broadcast and how we actually broadcast. If we can get a broadcast deal through in a certain way, then it suddenly means that the budgets actually don't look quite so bad as they currently do. I've not read social media in the last 3.5 weeks or so.
To be fair, it was the BBC that got the grief from it. The BBC got the hammer, pulling out the sport and what have you. I don't think there was any criticism at all of the World Bowls Tour. You got the new sponsorship deal, everything's rosy in the garden, then the BBC come along and pull the carpet from underneath your feet.
Pretty much. It's really unfortunate, just the timing of it. Yeah, another couple of years would have given us a stability to be where we're at, where we want to be as an event. Yeah, and I think there was progressive stuff that was happening. The good thing, or the positive thing, is how much the PBA members are still supporting all of the qualifiers. I understand that the qualifiers went online before this announcement, but even since this announcement, we're still getting requests, put people in waiting lists and be part of events. It's superb the amount of people who want to be at these events. And as I said at the PBA AGM as well, that we can run any event we want to run. We can run any event with TV or without TV, or with streaming or without streaming. There is something special about trying to win the World Championship, whether it's going to be on a streamed platform or whether it's in the BBC. It's still the biggest prize pot we give away in the sport. It's still something that's special for people to qualify for. I was down at Northfield the other day at national championships, and there's something special about being at your national championships, as Leamington will have there as well. It's one of the things people aspire to do, get to your national finals and then try and win it. And the other thing that I think people want to aspire to do at a certain level is play at Potters in a World Championship, and then ideally start winning rounds at the World Championships. I know some folk are more successful at that than others, but yeah, it's still out there.
Director of me there.
I think he was director of you and all. I think it was like it was a veiled comment. Like,
it's been nice to see you, Gordon.
See you later, Gordon. Yeah, you're off now.
We will edit all of this so that you come out really bad.
Yeah. The one thing that I'll add to everything that you've said, Gordon, is, and it's something that I've wanted to say for a while. It'll be interesting, because if the finances and the prize money get reduced, it'll be interesting to see the support from the top 16, to see if they are still as supportive of the WBT rather than take. Let's just see if they give you some leeway, because if the money's not there, mate, I'm a firm believer. They might milk the cow sometimes. The old saying, milk the cow. Let's see if they support it in your hour of need.
I'll reword it slightly, probably from where you put it. I think I see that both my roles with World Bowls Tour and PBA, in some ways, it feels like you're sort of involved with a union, or different unions, two different unions almost, and they've got different demands. But at the end of the day, they're all trying to get the best possible for both of them. I think there are members of both the PBA and the WBT side, top 16 side. I know they're PBA members as well, but the ones who don't play in the qualifiers, there are people in both organisations who are quite demanding, and that's never normally a bad thing. Actually, people pushing you to actually, a PBA member phoned me the other day, and it was a sort of 40-minute phone call about number of ends we play in qualifiers and how you maybe could do something different with the tie. And I've no problem with that people should be putting in their input and thinking about how you can actually do it better. And similarly, while I was at the Commonwealth Games, I had a 40-minute conversation with a top 16 player talking about the future, and it wasn't all negative. There was plenty in there that was positive about trying to support and making sure that the events can be as good as possible with less money going out the way as possible. And we are going to rely on players to do bits of commentary for nothing in the next year year that will allow us to make sure that the prize pots are as good as possible. We will be cutting some prize money out there, and we'll have to see how that's taken by both qualifying players and players that are already in top 16. And I'd hope that everybody understands we're trying our best to balance the books and keep at least 2 events on the tour. Ideally, keep 3 events on the tour. And any assistance and any willingness to go and lead it, I have no problem. If folk can come forward and actually think they can definitely do it better, there's scope there for that to be done as well.
Like I say, I think from my point of view, Gon, I think the positives have got to be the fact that the Scottish and the Worlds are still going ahead. It's a great thing. It's not like it'll be an easy cop out to turn around and say, oh, the BBC's gone now, so we're pulling this, we're pulling that. So, credit to yourselves for securing those 2. I mean, from the top 16 point of view, if there's 12 of them don't want to support it, then I fully, absolutely back that, because that means I'm probably just about scrape in. And it's probably the only way I am going to scrape into the top 16. So I'll write down the 12 I'm thinking of, and we'll get shot at them. I can't see.
I'm saying that if any of the top 16 say they're taking a year out, then Charlie Bence will be happy to take the spot.
Charlie.
For the next year or so.
No, I'm quite confident. I agree with you, Gon. I think there's a real backing and a real want to progress, the PBA and the WBT tournament. So I don't think there'll be any doubt in the fact that there'll be an understanding and there'll be the backing there. And from my point of view, not being a part of it now, just credit to yourselves and thanks so much for obviously still giving us the opportunity to at least play in 2 major competitions this year, regardless of whether it's on social media, YouTube, whatever it might be. It doesn't really take away the credibility of both competitions, and I'm sure everybody will be wanting to try and qualify or obviously try and win the event as well. So great stuff. And from again, I don't know if Richie wants to add anything, but I think it's been a perfect time to get you on to have a chat. I think it's hopefully those who listen will get a better picture of what the Commonwealth Games was like in the big scheme of things, and those who think, as we've said, things should have been different. There was reasons for that, and then obviously from the WBT point of view, a better understanding of why what has happened, basically. So thanks so much for that.
No problem. As I say, I think our sport, as with anybody that's involved with minority sports, I think we never get the right attention. The papers don't cover us enough. The television doesn't cover us enough. And probably even at a government level, they don't actually realise how much good has been done in the sport out there at club level, grassroots level, and how competitive we are at a world structured level. But we're so much ahead of actually a lot of sports out there of being able to have a player that's playing club level bowls today and could be playing for the World Championship tomorrow. And that's the great situation of the PBA and the WBT model. And so many of those WBT players were the ones who were selected for their country at Commonwealth Games level as well, and playing from there. It's just trying to get that message out there. And there will come a point and potentially a day where those who love the sport and love watching the sport might have to be asked to pay for it behind a paywall like TNT, or even from a streaming point of view. If our 45,000 subscribers to our channel all paid £10 a year, you suddenly have £500,000 to play with that you don't have currently. But we understand that's not the route we want to ideally go down, because we don't want to bar people from actually viewing it. But there are people there that are willing to support the sport if we can just get the right balance out there also. It's a really challenging time, as a number of the things in the last few years have been really challenging. It would be nice to just have a couple of years of sort of stability and nice everything feels quite easy, but that's probably not where our sport is. I just hope we come out the end of it with a production, an agreement with a broadcaster, and get the sport back to where it should be.
Yeah, definitely. I wish you the best of luck with that. Fingers crossed. It would be great for the sport. And like I say, if it did happen, then, like I said earlier on, I just think it maybe opens the doors to just doing something slightly different to what we've seen in the norm for a lot of years now. But no, great stuff, Gordon. Great to chat. Great work. That's all I can say. Just as a thought of a sponsor, seeing as your feet are knackered, Revitive. That's supposed to be very good, mate. Get on to Revitive. If it's good enough for Claire Bolden, it's good enough for Gordon Woods.
Yeah. And I definitely am aware that there was an awful lot of packets of Compede that were being used in that venue. So that's another target sponsor. And the new Scottish Indoor Secretary, he works for the company that does deep heat and deep freeze. So again, that's another one that's surely on our target list.
Too right.
Yeah.
Well, Gordon, thanks very much. It's been fantastic. It's been great to catch up, and look forward to seeing you out on the tour and the PBAs through the season as well.
Thanks
very much, guys. Thank you.
See you there, mate.
That's it.
Ta-ra.
Cheers.
Ta-ra.
With it being August, it's obviously the season of pheasant shooting, aka let's have a go at Bulls England, which I'm not going to defend them 100% because I have to say their communication department needs to give their heads a wobble. Communications that have come out recently should have been coming out in middle of June. Was in fact like a bad news week really for them because they put the post out about the players' passes, then the streaming, and then the tickets, and then the World Championship tickets.
Yeah, I've seen quite a lot of the comments, and it's another one of those. There's arguments for, there's arguments against. There's always will be. Still needs to be a mentality change with regards to value for money of what you're actually paying and what you're actually getting. Needs to be looked at. You know, there's a lot of people commenting about how expensive it is, and my age-old argument is this sport has never ever been expensive, and it only becomes expensive because it's starting to get to the price points of others. Quite sad at times to read some of the comments because, like, for God's sake, man, get into the real world. It's hard, but look, like you said, it's been a culmination of 2 or 3 posts that probably just hasn't helped the situation because it's ended up being an absolute dogfight. Everybody's just jumping onto the same thing. So anything positive that comes out is just automatically turned into a negative straight away, which is just the way it is.
To get into Leamington was $8.50 online, $11.50 at the gate, £2, free for the under 2s, I should say. And I think the kids were a £5.
The proof in the pudding, Rich, and I always say this is
how many people
people's going to be there.
Yeah.
And, you know, is it last year or the year before? Absolute uproar, rage all over social media. I cannot believe this. Nobody's going to be there. And the place was heaped. Is it just the odd voices that keep popping up now and again, or is there validity in some of the comments? And I'll certainly not turn around and say that there isn't, because that's unfair, because people are entitled to an opinion. But is it actually affecting the majority of people who want to actually go and watch the sport? I very much doubt it. And if it does, then I'm sure Bulls England will look inside their own door and say, well, maybe we got this one wrong.
You know, my friends, I'm a Worthing man. The reason I came away from Worthing was probably possibly the greens and possibly the hotel costs and what have you. But now you go to Leamington and they've cottoned on. They've done exactly the same.
But they have. But at the same time, I think you mentioned it the other day as well when we were having a chat. It's like they used to charge to get through the gate. The equivalent money then is probably the equivalent money now with the cost of inflation and price rises and everything. So there was no different back in the glorious Worthing days that everybody talks about to what it is now. But yet people seem to just jump on this whole let's tear up Bulls England a new one. And
the streaming and all that was part of the sponsorship deal with the Riva, and that's not there now. So they've got to find the money from somewhere. I mean, you kind of keep dipping in your back pocket all the time. I mean, the event, when we first started doing this podcast, the event at Leamington compared to what it is now, it's just tremendous.
It is. It's fantastic, yeah.
It's just a tremendous 18 days.
But then, how do you win? I touched on it a minute ago. The sport's been too cheap for too long. So what do? Do we match the other sports with regards to affiliation costs and charge £25 a year? Bulls England not need to ask you for anything now. Yeah. Or do we keep it at the level that it's at, which is literally for 2 cups of coffee, and you need to increase and find the money elsewhere? And it's always one of them scenarios. There's a whinge if they don't, and there's a whinge if they do, and there's no middle ground. No. So it's like, if you like it, great. If you don't like it, don't go.
That's exactly right.
Stand on your own 2 feet and basically just show, right, I ain't going to go. But what I will also turn around and say is, some of those voices that you hear whinging and moaning all the time, I walk in there and go, hang on a second, what are you doing in here? Because if I was that annoyed about something, this would be the last place I'd be at. Yeah.
I mean, it makes you smile because one brother, after we go to Leamington for 30 years, so if it's that bad, surely you wouldn't be gone for 30 years. Price is everything and what have you.
Yeah.
Regarding the streaming, $9.99 for a week's streaming. If you can afford it, do it. It's value for money. Are we part of the problem where we always say our streaming's going to be free? People now sort of say, well, you can watch free streaming on Bulls Australia, but what they forget is them people who streaming in Bulls Australia ain't doing it for now.
No, exactly.
It ain't doing it for now, you know.
Exactly, yeah. Cost attached to everything. It's a double-edged sword because goes, right, okay then, so we'll do the streaming for free down at the Nationals. However, next year your ticket prices are going to go by £5 to accommodate that. Hell on again. Exactly. No, you cannot do that. You cannot. Yeah. Well, you cannot have one and you cannot have the other. So there's got to be middle ground somewhere. And this is once a year for 2 and a bit weeks of a year. It's once a year. We're not asking every week. It's not every whatever. It's like it's an event that everybody plays to get to. And yes, like I say, there's arguments for prize money. Yes, there's argument with this. But then at the start of the season, everybody knows that's the scenario. That's so if it's that much of an issue, don't enter.
Exactly. One of the posts that I've just seen this morning, and I've quoted it to you before, and I'm going to read it out. I'm not really sure where a whopping $7.35 affiliation fee is going to stretch to everything you want to achieve, and yet when Bowls England put up the fees, everyone moans. And there's the root issue of our sport. And I think that just hit the nail on the head, that one, mate. I think the bowlers want everything, but we don't want to pay for it. A little increase, we don't want it.
And I wonder how many of those people who actually complain actually know whether all of their affiliation fees are being paid by their members. It's not just for competition, it's for every single person who plays bowls should be paying an affiliation fee. If that was happening, you wouldn't have these issues.
Yeah, that's right. Everybody's got their own opinion and everybody's entitled to it. I just wish that they wouldn't go so hard on social media, because any sponsor who's looking to sponsor the sport, just have a look at Bowls England and the national governing body's Facebook pages, and then you see just negativity. There's nobody comes on and says, it's great. And I think that's the thing is, the majority of people that go to Leamington enjoy it, but they never get the feedback to say, yeah, it's great. There's always the negative. There's nothing saying, what a fabulous 18 days I've had at Leamington. Mm-hmm. Great experience. Loved every minute of it.
Or if it does happen, it's shrouded by the rest. That's the problem.
It is. It is. Right, mate. And just to finish on the Bowls England subject, we've noticed the ladies' 2 bowl singles, due to a clash, turned out to be a best of 3 end tie-break. Apparently one of the players was due to play in the junior pairs final, and the other player was due to play in the senior pairs earlier on the day. And then, of course, later on in the week, under 17 boys final, Louis Hodges was in that, and he was also through to the foundation pairs, and they had to get a sub in for that, mate. So what's your thoughts?
It's not right for me. I know what my response would have been if I'd been asked. There's a lot of things to consider about. It's not just being down at the national finals and trying to cram things in. This is a season-long issue. It's like you're travelling, you're going to compete, you're going to different places, you're paying your green fees to get to that finals, to be able to compete in the finals. I would like to think that there'll be a reason comes out for the decision, but I just don't think the timing is a good one, because still not getting dark until 8 o'clock at night. It's if it meant waiting for another 45 minutes, just holding one of those games back to play it, then I fully think it should have been played. And to go out of a national championship having taken other people out in a 3 tie-break end, it just doesn't look good. And like I say, from a playing point of view, I'd have been absolutely livid. Like, I'd have been kicking coffee cups and all kinds about. But the
puzzling thing is that half the draw could play at 3:15, which was the half that had the problem, and yet the other half of the draw played at 4 o'clock. Yeah. I mean, it's surely a 2 ball singles is like a 45-minute walk. I mean, we know our thoughts on 2 ball singles streaming. So you would have thought, well, surely they would have let them play them at 4 o'clock. But
which again is why I hope there's a reasoning comes out for it to justify the decision, because again, we're trying to encourage people to play in the competitions. We're talked, there's been a bit of flack with the entry fees and things like that. That's just going to create something more where people aren't potentially going to enter, because if they're going to say, well, if I'm going to get down there and it clashes with something and I've got to play a 3-end tie-break, then it'd be interesting just to know what the conversation was between the 2 players, and obviously Louis as well, whether there was an agreement to it or whether it was a reluctant agreement or whether there was a valid reason for having to do it. But it's speculation from our point of view, but looking from the outside, it certainly doesn't create a good look.
No, not at all. And of course, we did have John Cockcroft on the podcast in 2014. 2024, I should say, 2014. My God, it feels like we've been doing this for 12 years. 2024, where I did put the question to him, are you trying to shoehorn too many events into 18 days where it was 30 days? And I will play his response to what we got. He ultimately said that the proposals that were proposed at the time would hopefully sort out the issues, but obviously not. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out. And here is that question we put to John Cockcroft back in 2024. People at Worthing, they forgot there was clashes at Worthing. There's clashes at Leamington. Now, it was originally a 30-day national championships, I'm led to believe, at Leamington when you first had the combined. Is it now just a case of trying to show on too many events into 18 days? And is it time to go back to a men's and ladies championships? There you go, John.
No. It's definitely not time to go back to a men's and ladies championships.
Right.
The period of the nationals is reduced. We've articulated in some of the communications that we sent out why we feel that is the case, both in terms of the portion of time we spend around the national finals, how we, as I said earlier, trying to move the event to a more sort of spectator orientated commercial event, as well as delivering the volume of participation places. Entry qualification places, I should say. Don't want to see clashes. We certainly don't want to see clashes in the premium events like the Blue Ribbon events. And we feel that should the propositions get voted through, we can manage that. But yeah, it is to some extent symptomatic of the fact that we have a lot of competitions that are increasingly overlapping with people playing in everything. And when you've got some sort of smaller counties and some of the better players, they're highly likely to end up qualifying in multiple things, which a lot of the recommendations are intended to avoid that.
Right, folks. Well, we hope you've enjoyed our little chat with Gordon, and many thanks. We'll be back soon. The rickshaw's getting greased as we speak with the PBA qualifiers. Many thanks, everybody, and enjoy Heatwave number 5.
Carol. Thank you for listening and hope you've enjoyed the show.
This has been a Dodgy production.